Here we go. Greetings, everyone, and welcome once again to another Wednesday night here at the Sports Crib. A few seats will be missing tonight. Let's see, Don has a power outage. Demetrius is on a plane. And maybe we'll get a visit from Bo. He's doing some remodeling work, but we'll see. But we have a lot to talk about today. And as usual, we'll start with our newly regular segment here, and that's with Sue's Corner. So, Dave.
All right. Well,
what's on the corner tonight?
Sue was anxiously awaiting your agenda this morning, and she read it over, and she gave me the following. The Ryder Cup starts Friday in Italy. U.S. versus Europe in head-to-head match play. Can be pretty thrilling stuff for a sport that is so low-key and heavy action. But if you've ever played golf, you know how hard it is, how mental it is, and it can be very compelling stuff. It happens every 2 years, and historically, the U.S. has won 27-14. So they've been playing this since in some format since the 1920s. And then she goes on to another subject. Is there any more impressive sight than a Penn State whiteout? I think not. I may be prejudiced, but that looked so cool the other night. 110,000 plus in attendance. Trivia on game days, State College becomes the third largest city in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
So that's Sue's Corner.
Oh, okay. All right. A little history there on the Ryder Cup. Yeah. Let's see. Bill, was it Bobby Walker on one of those teams? I know it's been around for quite some time, as he said, since the 20s, but
you mean Bobby Jones? Is that who we're
trying
to? Or Walter Hagen? Or are you combining the two? But yeah, the Ryder Cup and on the women's side, the Solheim Cup are, as Sue so assiduously pointed out, are a chance for the sort of staid, almost boring game of golf to embrace emotion a little bit instead of rejecting it as is the norm. And, you know, generally they're telling you to basically tiptoe around normally. And then in the Ryder Cup, you get chants sometimes, cheering, it's raucous would be an exaggeration. Even at its wildest, it doesn't qualify as raucous, but it is a different environment than golf outings. And so, yeah, we are at the 44th Ryder Cup. It starts in a couple of days, and it was postponed. I think they postponed it in 2021. So, we've missed, and then World War II also has interfered, but so it throws it off. It's the exact number we normally would have had if it weren't for things like the war and, in this case, COVID-19. But Luke Donald is the captain for Europe. Zach Johnson is the U.S. captain, and it's going to, be interesting to see, because always there's a young player. That's one of the things. My thing I like most about it is what player I'm not really familiar with shows me something, emerges. And there's been a few in the past. I'm trying to remember what that young gentleman's name was, who was, I believe, Korean American a couple of years ago, a couple of Ryder Cups ago, who I'd like seen him in college. I think he was a Stanford. He's a Stanford grad also. And he and Tiger were kind of friendly or friends or something. And I'd been aware of him a little, but I wasn't aware of him. I hadn't really paid attention. And he came through in a couple of the pairings, in a tight in places Ryder Cup. So I always like to look for some of those players I'm not super familiar with I'm aware of them. I've seen them, but I haven't really paid attention. This gives you a chance to focus on players. Like I said, you may not be the top of the top. You may not have seen them a bunch of times. That's one of my favorite things about it.
Let's see. Hall of Fame third baseman Brooks Robinson passed away at the age of 86.
Yep.
And I know I'm old enough to remember Brooks in his prime. Some of you probably caught him on the end of his career, but Bill, what are some of your thoughts and memories of Brooks Robinson?
Amongst the things that stood out to me, and he was one of my father was not a fan of the team, but he was a fan of the man. And we saw a lot of them. Where I grew up, back when the superstation things were first starting, you would get a game of the week, Jack Buck, and Joe Garagiola, right? Joe Garagiola and Jack Buck, and then later was Joe and Tony Kubek, I think it was later. But baseball was, you had like the Cubs had a superstation. In certain parts of the country, you can catch the Yankees on their thing a little later. But the big one was TBS with the Braves, right? So I saw a lot of the Braves. Never became a fan, but I saw them a lot. You get to see the Cubs sometimes, but we, in my part of the country, got to see the Orioles a lot. And I got to see, obviously, Brooks Robinson and Kenny Singleton paired up for a while as a broadcast team. And then later, Kenny went to New York, I think, and they paired him with someone else for a while. But got to see the tail end of his career. His glove never left him. His glove never left him, but his bat, both the power and the average had kind of left a little bit by the time I got a chance to see him as a player. He played until I was about almost 10 years old. So yeah, he played I saw a decent amount of the end of his career, but he's no longer, he was the MVP, at one point. I was a small child when he was playing at that level. I didn't really watch baseball until I was probably about 4. So I remember I saw Al Kaline's last game, and that was 71. But still, even the reduced, batting wise, reduced version of him was still a very good player. But the thing I also remember about it was that when, Baltimore is right on the mix or right around the Mason-Dixon line. It's southern in some ways and northern in other ways. But when, Frank Robinson came in, the Arkansas raised Brooks Robinson made a point of befriending him, both for the good of the team, because he had to sort of share, he had a new superstar there and he had to sort of share the spotlight with him. But more importantly, in this town that had not always been the friendliest to African Americans, he went out of his way to establish that this guy's an Oriole, he's one of us, and he's going to help us win. And he did, right? They were a very good team before Frank Robinson got there. They were a great team once Frank Robinson was there, because Frank Robinson was a terrific all-around baseball player.
Dave,
and Brooks,
what was some of your favorite memories or thoughts of
Brooks?
Brooks?
I grew up in Maryland. I spent the from the time I was 8 years old in Maryland, so heard a lot about him, a lot of them. But the big memory was the 71 World Series. The Pirates played the Orioles twice in the 70s. I think he had retired by the 79 World Series, but in the 71 World Series, he helped win Game 6. Hit a sacrifice fly, and I'm not sure if it was Merv Retmond or whoever scored the winning run to push it to 7 games. But it wasn't his stick that just amazed me. It was his fielding. And the thing that I can remember is watching him play. As soon as the contact was made, with the bat to the ball, he was already moving. And so he, from third base, he would field some balls that you thought for sure were going to get through. But because of his anticipation, and I don't know if it was the sound, I don't know how he did it, but he just would always move in the right direction. And his anticipation in fielding was just immaculate. And he really took the place of, up until Brooks Robinson came around, people considered Pie Traynor, I think, one of the all-time great third basemen. This is from the old days.
Sure.
And Brooks Robinson helped erase the memory of Pie Traynor simply because of how good of a fielder he was. So the 71 World Series, that's what I'll always remember, Brooks Robinson, because that was a very, very good Baltimore Orioles team that the Pirates were playing.
Yes, it was. Yeah, I remember that. I think that was the last time the two of them. No, what did you say? 79. Yeah, I think that was.
They played again in 79, but he had already.
Yeah,
I think he retired 77.
77. Yeah, I caught the end of his career. Yeah, good.
Dave, the Pirates scored 11-8 in September and 31-29 in their last 60 games. What's you look out for next year? Are we going up? Are we going down? What's the temperature here?
Yeah, you have to look to next year. They were eliminated, I think, this past weekend from any ability to make the playoffs this year. I think the story, they basically had a hot start, and then they kind of fizzled, but then they stayed about 10 games under 500. Basically, we're a 500 team for most of the season. Their problem is pitching. They had one starting pitcher, Keller, and they had one closer reliever, Bednar, and that's as deep as their pitching went. Offensively, they were okay, but they have a lot of young players. So I think, it's going to depend on what happens with all these young players that they've gone into. They have this Paul Skeens, who kind of in his debut kind of got like dinged up, but they think that he is already anticipating what he needs to improve his game. And he was throwing averaging 99 miles per hour, his throws. Almost every one of his throws, he has some smoke. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does. I think 15 out of their 20 draft picks were pitchers. So that shows how much importance that the Pirates are putting in on pitching. And if they can build depth, I mean, they had a lot of injuries. McCutcheon, he's old. He was playing designated hitter. He was on the IR. They had a number of other players on the IR. So what they need is depth. And I think that's what they're trying to do. But it's time to look forward to 2024 and to see if they can be on the sunshine side of 500. I don't see them necessarily being a playoff team, but if they can be a solid, 10 games over 500, something like that, where they're playing some winning ball, then I think the future is looking bright for the team.
Bill, what the hell is going on up there in Chicago? Is it true that the Cubs fumbled their way out of the playoffs?
Well, that's the way to put it, I guess, fumbled their way. The Cubs are in a very odd situation. First of all, they're, as a franchise, there's usually the haves and the have-nots in baseball, right? Usually you have teams that have a lot of resources and money and expectations, and then you have teams that are playing baseball because they're a baseball team and they got to go play baseball games. But deep down in their heart of hearts, they know they have no shot. You've got the Oakland A's. You've got teams that are just doing it because they're professionals. They signed a contract. And then you have the Cubs that are this weird between place. They have all the money and resources, right? But they don't seem to have the same approach that teams like the Dodgers or the Astros or even the Yankees, who aren't good at it, but at least are aggressive in the way that they try to build their team. Not smart, not well, but aggressive. So when I look at the way the Cubs are constructed as a franchise, okay, do they have great pitching? Not really. Do they have a nucleus of great young talent, like, teams like the Reds or teams like Tampa Bay or Atlanta that you can get excited about, even if they aren't superstars yet? They're about to be. No, not really. They've got some established players that have been around for a while who are very good, but great. I can't think of a single guy where I think, oh man, that guy's great. That guy's headed to the Hall, right? No, if that guy's on the team, I haven't seen him. So there's some confusing things about the way that team is even put together. That's the first thing I'll say. I think they got hot, as teams will do, for a while, but I never thought it was sustainable. I always thought to myself, yeah, this team's going to come back to earth. They're going to come back down. So if you don't have at least that sort of 1-2 punch at the top of your starting rotation that a lot of the top teams have, the way you make up for it is by depth, sort of spread across your pitching rotation, both starting and relieving. But do they have that? I would say no. Do they have an absolute killer relief pitcher that's like, oh my God, we have no chance against that guy? I would say no. Do they have one hitter that terrifies you? Like, oh my gosh, if that kind of comes up with two guys on base, I don't care what the situation is, automatically walk him. Nope. So it's easy to say that a team should be good. You feel like a team should be good. I mean, Cody Bellinger's a big deal name, but does his play justify that big deal name? I would say no. I like Yan Gomes, but he's not exactly a stud or a star. He's solid. Dansby Swanson's interesting, solid player. Ian Happ, capable of getting hot, can give you something, but he's not a carry the team kind of player. I mean, their pitching is Justin Steele, Jameson Tolman. Marcus Stroman's probably my personal favorite. Kyle Hendricks is an innings eater and a guy that can, but on a good roster, he's a third or fourth guy in the rotation. Jordan Wicks is young, so at least you've got that going for him, but we don't know exactly what he is yet. And then the relievers are a mixed bag, I think would be the fairest way to put it. And there's some feel old moments for me on this roster, like Mark Leiter Jr. Oh, wow, I feel old. But they've got Drew Smiley. They've got, but who of these guys scares you, right? Who's the guy you think, man, how do we deal with that guy? Wow, that guy's tough, right? So I don't see a team that I think is built, if they make the playoffs, to do much. And a team that I'm not surprised didn't make the playoffs, or if they don't make the playoffs. Doesn't surprise me at all.
Bill, you originated a term here on the show, glue guys.
Glue guys, yep.
And usually when we refer to glue guys, we're talking about basketball. We're talking about guys that mold the team together. Maybe we call them the heart of the team. They might be a sixth man, a seventh man, whatever. But they're usually outside of your top five.
Correct.
And I came across a very interesting statistic. And I thought maybe this might apply to your term glue guys, but put it in baseball perspective. Because I'm looking at two guys here whom are I would say, if you know baseball, I mean, they are relatively household names. But how good can you be when you don't even hit 200?
Yes, right. Yes.
The Phillies, Kyle Schwarber is hitting 198 with
Yep.
100 RBIs, and he scored 104 runs. Max Muncy of the Dodgers, he's hitting 211.
Yep.
And he's hitting 102 RBIs, and he'll probably score over 90 runs. Bill,
Yep.
are these glue guys?
Well, I mean, not based on what they're getting paid, James. No. I mean, glue guys are guys to me that are making, $3 to $7 million a year. The guys you're talking about probably tip that in a year. So no, that they are not my definition. Have you seen what these guys make? The guys you just named, what they make?
Oh, I know what they make, but once again, I mean, like I said, one of them's hitting 198, the other one's hitting 211. I mean, there has to be a reason for them to still be in the rotation, other than the fact that they're just getting paid.
Yeah. Well, here's the point I want to make. That to me, a glue guy is a guy that, well, one is definitely not a household name, but also isn't being paid all the money in the world. Like when you're making what those guys make, you should be a star, not a glue guy. Glue guys don't make, 30, 27, 28, 20, whatever $1 million a year. That to me, that's going against the whole glue guy, mentality, the whole glue guy lifestyle. Like the glue guy shouldn't be making well into the 20s of millions of dollars. Where I come from, that's not a glue guy, James. That guy is a lobster guy. That's not glue. That's lobster.
Well, what's your thoughts on this guy? On these guys? Like I said, how good can you be when you don't even hit 200?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
They got to produce. If you're being paid that kind of money, you need to produce. And I'm not sure what recourse the teams have, but they need to do something. I mean, that's. I mean, talk about a horrible return on investment. I don't know. I really don't know what the teams can do. Do you sit them? I mean, if you got another player that's going to go up there and bat, 225, well, then maybe you need to examine that contract to see if you have any outs, any way to get out of that contract if they're not going to produce.
Like I said, baseball has some strange things. I mean, Bobby Bonilla is still getting paid, right?
When does that end?
I think it's soon, though. I think we're coming to the end of it. I think it might be another year or two, but we're getting close to the end.
Whoever his agent was, boy.
I thought it was at least up until 2025. But
yeah, I think it's 2025. I think we're in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Dave, Adam Wainwright says he's at peace with his retirement choice. 8 days after pitching 7 scoreless innings and earning his 200th win, Wainwright says he's stepping off the mound for good. Is Adam a Hall of Famer, Dave?
Well, first of all, I want to say hats off to somebody that can leave the game after a top performance, because I'm sure for a lot of people it's tempting to come back. The problem for a lot of athletes is they don't know when to stop. They always kind of, it's like the opposite of the Peter principle. They kind of go a little bit beyond what their natural abilities are, and then sometimes there's some sad endings. As far as him being a Hall of Fame candidate, I don't know. I would have to look. I know in the NFL, they give percentages. They kind of give like points in terms of how far along a player is toward getting into the Hall of Fame. I don't know if the Major League Baseball has a similar thing, but maybe Bill, you might have an idea on that.
Yeah, they have what's called a Hall of Fame monitor. If you go onto Pro Baseball Reference, Adam Wainwright is what I would call Hall of Very Good, and I throw him in the same sort of box with guys like Dean Chance and guys like who's the guy I'm thinking of? Jerry Royce, right? Remember Jerry Royce? I mean,
yep.
Jerry Royce was good and good for a long time, but would you ever try to put him in the Hall of Fame?
Right.
And he's a similar kind of career. So I'm going to say he's Hall of Very Good. And
I think
now,
Royce played for the Royals way back in the day. That's going way back.
He played for a lot of people, but here's the point: played for the White Sox, played for the Dodgers, but here's the point: if we're talking basketball Hall of Fame, like a player equivalent to him has a shot. The Basketball Hall of Fame is very permissive, I think is the term I would use, while baseball is a small hall, basically, right? I was a little surprised Scott Rowland got in as quickly as he did. It shows that now the advanced metrics crowd is starting to have more influence over the process. But Jerry Royce was 220, 191, 220 and 191 with a 3.64 ERA. Very similar pitcher to Wainwright. And he's never going to sniff the Hall. So I can't imagine why Wainwright would.
Bill Buster only says that the Astros will be tough to beat in October if they get there. Are the Astros bound for October, Bill?
It's a definite maybe. I mean, they could. I will say this: they could. They certainly could. It's about pitching and getting hot at the right time. That's like every other year. How's your pitching? Are you getting hot at the right time? Do you avoid, that? Does one of your stars go into a slump at the wrong time? I mean, there's so many things that can take you out of the postseason. But they have a shot. They've been there before. They're a talented roster. I think they have a less than 50% chance, but they have a chance, yes.
Yeah, this was a study definitely for Don. We know Don is our biggest Astros fan on the show. Dave, here's a good one for you. The Braves have surpassed 300 home runs, and they're eyeing the Major League Baseball record of 307. Now, the Braves are the first National League team to hit that mark, and it's just the third team overall. The other two being the 2019 Twins and Yankees that hit 307 and 306 respectively. So, Dave, do I invest $20 in the office pool, or do I take grandma's insulin money to Las Vegas?
Well, what's interesting is baseball is such a traditional sport. At one time, there was a certain kind of mud that they had to find to coat the balls. I mean, really, really very traditional. But I think what's happening is baseball is fun. Like with the rules change is hey, and like with other sports, hey, we want offense. People want to have offense. Now, I think that I think the Braves, and I think that they'll do everything they can to give the Braves an opportunity to surpass that record. So I would say I would put my money on it. I don't know if I would take my grandmother's insulin dollars to bet on it, but hey, I would give them a good shot. I mean, this is what Major League Baseball wants. That they want offense. They want home runs. They want this story. Every year you need to be breaking some type of a new record. So I put my money on it.
So, Bill, am I taking the 20 or are we going big time?
I mean, I'd go somewhere between 20 and grandma's insulin money. I feel like, yeah, somewhere between the two. So maybe 100. You know, if you've got a hundo you don't need, maybe toss that in.
All right. Okay. Let's talk a little college football here. Okay. Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman knew that the Irish had only 10 men on the field.
Yep.
And he said he had no timeouts and didn't want to take a penalty or give Ohio State a free play. So is it better to take an L? You know, and I'm asking this, for a Notre Dame fan. Bill, better to take the L or the Irish Eagle? I mean, what the hell goes on? Maybe you can explain it to me.
Sure. So if he calls a timeout that he doesn't have, that results in what's called, for those who are not familiar with the sport of American tackle football, a legal procedure. Now, admittedly, it's a situation where the penalty is not very punitive because they moved the ball, I don't know, 7 inches or whatever in that case. And they would just, set it up and go again. I have a feeling they would have gotten in either way, but you would prefer to have a full complement of players on defense to defend that situation. We have seen, I know I haven't, I'm sure you have, is where a team actually goes with 10 and they're successful, right? Both occasionally on offense, but mostly on defense it happens due to, having to try to substitute late in the clock situation, and you realize once again you don't have enough, either you don't have timeouts or you don't realize you've only got 10. But yeah, they were a little bit overmatched in that situation anyway. And how satisfying for Ryan Day, who had to hear, Lou Holtz talk about how soft his team is. But yeah, it was, to me, I don't think that particular thing lost the game. I think that I think Notre Dame was going to give up a touchdown there anyway. But you would much rather have 11 players. So if I'm going to be flagged for, for legal procedure for calling a penalty, but I don't have one, they move the ball, that far, I'm going to live with that. And we'll try it again with 11.
I mean, what's your thoughts, Dave? Notre Dame had just stopped them down there on a 4th and 1, right?
And I understand it was the last 2 plays that they had 10 players on the field. And what I don't understand about his logic is I think that he was talking about getting another defensive lineman in there. And so you're only going to go half the distance to the goal line. They were already less than a yard to go.
Right.
I mean, are you seriously saying that you're better off not going with an 11th player on your goal line? It doesn't pass mustard. I think he's just trying to find a way to make an excuse for a serious error. I mean, there's no excuse not to have 11 players on the field. That's an error of the coaching staff.
Yeah.
And no, you don't just take the loss. That's ridiculous. Get your 11th player out there and then try to stop them. And I agree with Bill. Probably they were going to score, but at least your chances are a little bit better of stopping them.
Your chances are much better if you have 11 players. Yes, that's why you don't see people just intentionally run plays without 11 players, because you're more likely to be successful with 11.
Correct.
And like I said, they had just stopped them with 11 on a 4th and 1, right? On the drive before that. So, I just couldn't understand the logic in that, like I said, But anyway.
Well, there really was no logic to that, unfortunately, James. I'm a big Marcus Freeman guy. I'm a big fan of his. He's a very talented young coach, heading up like a rocket ship. But this was a mistake. He should have just said, we blew it.
Well, maybe we can add that luck when Pitt visits him. When's that? In November, I believe.
Pitt's going to have a long season, I'm afraid.
Yeah, my physical therapist, one of his buddies works at for Notre Dame, and he had went out to the game. So we were talking about that, and I think the next game he's going out there will be the Pitt Notre Dame game. But moving on, Bill, the Ducks coach Dan Lanning on Colorado said they're fighting for clicks. We're fighting for wins. And I don't know, whether a lot of people heard it or not, but very quietly, Coach Prime says, "Yeah, I keep receipts, you know."
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he was talking about at the concession stand. But anyway, Buffalo has fallen out of the top 25.
Right.
So, what's your thoughts there, Bill?
Well, I think it's almost exactly what I said before. This team was hastily constructed, and I'll go back to the George Young, Bill Parcells planet theory about team construction. When you are starting to construct your team, okay, you try to find a quarterback, obviously, but almost immediately after that, you try to find the people who are hard to find on the planet. Who are the hardest people to find on the planet? 300 plus pounders, right? Because they're rare. There's fewer of them than there are of other people. And look at how that roster is constructed. They're very thin, both in terms of like actual weight, like they are lighter. I mean, they're not light for the old days, but they're light for nowadays. I think the heaviest player on the team is something like 307 pounds, which doesn't sound small, but by modern top tier college football standards, that's a lightest, heaviest player to have. There's a guy at Florida who outweighs him by over 100 pounds, right? Now, that's not normal. I mean, you don't really have 400 plus pound players, but that gives you an idea of how much smaller he is than some other guys playing college football. That's the largest guy, or heaviest guy they have on the roster. So they are thin, both sort of figure of speech wise, but also in terms of actual size wise, in terms of how their lines are constructed. They don't have gigantic dudes. Now, some of that is because of Sean Lewis's offense. It's one of the fastest offenses in terms of just being, it's the uppest of up-tempo offenses. That by itself knocks 12 to 20 pounds off of your offensive linemen just because they have to, they're snapping the ball sometimes at 11 seconds, So, yeah, you're going to drop some pounds. But they don't have a depth of talent or depth or size along the lines, both offense and defense. And it caught up with them, as I said it would. And God help them when they have to play Utah, right? Which is basically Wisconsin, but in the mountains of Utah, where they just want to punch you in the liver all day long. So you combine that with the loss of Travis Hunter, one of the most talented college football players anywhere. And I think all of us who really see the game clearly knew that was going to be a very tough game and probably not a very close game for the Colorado Buffaloes. I'm still a big fan of Deion and what he's doing, and I think he's going to win a lot of games, especially a couple of years from now, right? Once he has his guys. He's a crackerjack recruiter. 4 and 5 stars that normally would have gone to, Texas A&M, Texas, normally would have gone to Oklahoma, normally would have gone to Oklahoma State, normally would have gone to, he's not going to get guys from, maybe some guys from USC also, but he's not going to get guys from maybe the top programs, except his transfers. But he's going to start getting some 4 and 5 star recruits to go with those transfers. Because right now his team is so transfer heavy, the most transfer heavy program in the history of college football. As I mentioned before, 39 out of 44 of the players in the 2 deep are new players. And of those, 37 or 36 are transfers, not high school players who came up as freshmen. So, excuse me. So there's never been a team this transfer heavy in the history of college football. That catches up with you a little bit as well. But don't worry, this team is good. It will be good. Will continue to get better, and will be very good in the future.
Dave, I think we all it was a consensus that Colorado never really belonged in the top 25. But it was a good story. It was a good Cinderella story, and it still is. But what did you think about the remarks of the Oregon coach?
Well, he's trying to motivate his team. He's trying to find that button that's going to get his team pumped up to defeat another team, and that's all he was doing. He was pushing a button. I'm going to talk more about Deion Sanders' post game remarks in my final thoughts tonight. But I think first of all, the Dion, when he was actually answering a question when the comment about keeping receipts came out, and he was very complimentary of the Colorado or excuse me of the Oregon coaching staff. But he was asked a specific question. He answered it honestly. Hey, I keep receipts. It was about 1 second out of a 10-minute post game interview. But I think with Dan Lanning, I don't see anything wrong with his remarks. He's trying to motivate his team, just like Deion Sanders is trying to motivate his team. What Colorado needs to do right now is to put Dan Lanning and Oregon in the rearview mirror because they got USC coming up, and that should be an interesting contest. I hope that they're even missing their best player. I'd like to see them be more competitive and almost what I see out of Colorado. And I hope you don't take it the wrong way, but there was a program a number of years ago called Last Chance U about these junior colleges that were attracting all these Division I players and other players that for whatever reasons got in trouble, got cut from their team or released from their team. And then they were basically giving them another chance to get back into Division I or even into the NFL. And a couple of those programs actually managed to get some players into the NFL. Well, on a greater scale, I can almost see Colorado in that way. Kind of like the old Oakland Raiders. Hey, we'll take everybody. You come in here, and then we're going to take on the rest of the country with our band of outlaws. And kind of what Deion has succeeded in doing is it's an us versus them. That's what a coach wants. It's us against the world. Okay, to bond that team together. And I think that he's done a very good job of it. And the best thing that he can do now is just put that in the rearview mirror and drive on, because that game's over. And I'm sure Oregon's going to do the same thing, to whoever they're playing next week.
Of course. Dave, Alabama falls out of the top 10 for the first time since 2015. Dave, has the portal and NIL ended Alabama's reign of terror over college football?
Well, I mean, it's not as if they're never going to get back into the top 10. And I think that the NIL and the portal, this has hurt the abilities of teams to sustain these like huge teams that have a huge amount of depth. You may have a second or third team player that's a young player that another team is saying, hey, you'll start for us. And now they have the ability to go, where before the eligibility requirements prevented that. So that teams could really stock up and be very deep. But I wouldn't count Alabama out. I think that they'll be back into the game. But I don't think it's going to be as easy now. It's going to be more challenging because you got well, we were just talking about Colorado. Other teams are saying, hey, we'll take you guys and we're going to start and we're going to go out and we're going to make a name for ourselves.
What do you think, Bill?
So the transfer portal has helped as much as it's hurt Alabama. For those who've somehow forgotten this, they've gotten some great players that have come there via the portal. I mean, they got Jamison Williams. They've gotten some guys that have come there via the portal that were good, important players. So NIL is a slightly tougher deal, but they're handling their business now in terms of that as well. Here's what I will say. The big difference has been that they got lucky, frankly, in terms of some of what they've done quarterback-wise the last few years, and that luck has run out. Both Milroe, who came there out of high school, and Carson Beck, who transferred there, neither has looked good. So that's the real issue. Like, we could say all these other things, and their offensive line is as good as it's been in the past also. I want to make that clear as well. But if they had a top-flight quarterback, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You wouldn't be asking me if, has the game passed Saban by, NIL and transport. We wouldn't be asking these questions because they'd still be winning. Their issue is that their offensive line is as good as normal, and their quarterback play has been well below average. Despite that, there might still end up being a 10 that goes 10-2. So imagine if 10-2 is your down year, kids. Welcome to Alabama. I'm not worried about Alabama. I mean, the day that I'm shedding tears or passing the hat for Alabama, I don't think that day will ever come, frankly. So there are one good quarterback transfer away from being right back to doing what they've always done.
It's a good thing Reggie's in Korea. Otherwise, I'm sure he has some rebuttal for you. But he'll be back next week also. Bill Shenandoah Haley Van Horst became the first woman non-kicker to play in a CFB game. She went from a commander cheerleader to a D3 safety. She got a hurry in her first game, but Bill, is this a big deal?
It's a medium-sized deal. She came on a safety blitz, well-timed. I watched it, and almost got there. Caused an incomplete pass out to the flat. Clearly rattled the quarterback. Here's what I will say. First of all, I love blitzing. If I could, one thing I could go back and do again, I would blitz more. Now, I'd probably get pulled off the field because my coordinator didn't like safety blitzes because they were, risky, whatever. Come on, live a little. But it's a medium-sized deal for two reasons. It's medium-sized because she's, at a D3, non-scholarship program, and still it's being treated as something important because it is. Because there's always been this feeling that this is something that, won't happen or can't happen or shouldn't happen or what have you. And I will say this much. We talked, I think, about wrestling even once before, which is my best sport when I was in high school and college. If you are capable of doing something, you should be able to do it. Now, there's going to come a day when somebody's going to pick her up on a blitz, right? Or whatever it is. And that'll be the great test, right? When will somebody treat her as an equal and lay her out? And will she pop right back up? I think the answer will probably be yes to both of those things, but we don't know until it happens. And to me, that'll be an even bigger moment. Now, I won't get as much coverage because it'll be the second time she's done it or whatever. So, the second whatever doesn't get nearly as much coverage. We don't hear as much about Alan B. Shepard. We don't hear as much about James Lovell. If you're the second, the third, the fourth man on the moon, it's like yawn. Whoever is the next player, whether it be her or whatever, to make a mark, there'll be a young lady who's going to catch a touchdown in a game. There's going to be a young woman who gets a sack, who gets an interception. Like, these things are going to stack up more and more, and eventually there's going to be a scholarship player. I remember Tony Harris, Antoinette Harris. Okay, So Antoinette Harris, Tony Harris, was a junior college defensive back, and she was at I can't remember which junior college it was, but she wasn't like this, where it's like a specialty kind of thing. She was a starter, but it was junior college, so it didn't get quite as much attention. But I followed Tony Harris. I follow her on, I almost said Twitter, X, whatever the heck it's called now. And she is now I think she now works in like engagement or something for the NFL. I'd have to go back and check what her actual position is, but she was a player, like a real player. You know what I mean? Like, it was like she was a starter. She started on her junior college team as a defensive back. Why that didn't get more attention, I'll never know. Quite frankly, because she was a baller. She could play.
Jay, what did you think about when you heard about this?
Tokenism is the way I took it, and I watched her play. She came in; they didn't even bother to try blocking her. She had a straight shot for the quarterback. As soon as the ball was snapped, she ran straight for the quarterback. She was credited for a hurry, but
Yeah,
I mean, she's quick. If you're not going to be blocked, well, of course you're going to get to the quarterback. She had a straight shot.
Yep.
Now and then she pulled the quarterback down on top of her after he threw the pass. But I think what this goes to is what football in general is trying to do, especially the NFL, but it permeates down through the college ranks and on down, is that they recognize that women are the biggest spenders on football. And they want to keep women engaged in the game of football. And I think that it's great for her. She got her game, and hopefully she gets to play more. It'll be interesting to see, what happens when she actually faces some full contact. I presume that that's happening in practice, though. So she should be capable. She should be game ready. But I was not impressed. I just wasn't. I mean, anybody, I could have gone there, and if nobody's going to block me, I'm going to get next to the quarterback, as he's passing the ball. And that's, let's see what happens when she's actually engaged. Will this result in more women playing the game? I think at some point, if the rules get a little bit less physical, if they change some of the, like already in the NFL, they're trying to enforce players leading with their helmets. So, like for example, Jalen Warren, who's like all of about 5'8", he was fined by the NFL for leading with his helmet, and he's like a running back, and so maybe that'll make more room in the game, but we'll see what happens. I for myself, I wasn't impressed. Now she could probably take me 2 out of 3. I mean, she's got to have something in her because she's been practicing with that team, and I'm sure that in the practices they weren't giving her unimpeded access to make her plays. So I want to be fair there, and we'll see how it plays out. I'd like to see another game from Shepard, just to see if she gets back in and plays and what happens.
yeah, it should be interesting to see, as you say, how far they go with this. Women, we know that women are investing in sports more and more. Buying the jerseys for their kids, their husbands, and whatnot. So, yes, it should be interesting to see where this goes.
Right. And like I said, I mean, Tony Harris was a scholarship player. Like, I don't know why there wasn't more attention to what she did. She was a legit player on scholarship. And for some reason, she kind of, I want to say under the radar. I mean, she was in a commercial and a few other things, but like this is being celebrated in a way that Antoinette Harris wasn't. So I just thought that was weird because she was to me, Antoinette Harris was a better football player.
Well, she was a starter, so. Okay, so let's move on to our NFL here before we get to our predictions. Let's Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes uses 3 touchdowns and routed the Bears 41-10. Mahomes becomes the fastest quarterback to 25,000 yards. And the 0-3 Bears are about to take a hard look at everything. Bill, your thoughts on this game?
I like that. A hard look at everything. We're considering disbanding the team. We're considering everything. It's all on the table. So I watched this team. I watched both those teams a lot because it's a good example of how to and how not to, right? It's a great, if you want to teach maybe there's a young person in your life who one day wants to be in an NFL front office, and you say, I want you to watch this game so you can see both the penthouse and the outhouse all at the same time. Brett Veach, who is the sort of unsung superstar of the Chiefs, is one of the best GMs, maybe the best, but well, okay, Howie Roseman's out there. So, but he's in the top 3 easily GMs in the NFL, and probably number 2, probably Howie Roseman and Brett Veach, and they're close together in my mind. They understand who to give money to and who not to give money to better than maybe any other team in the NFL. They've had very few missteps. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, to me, is like the only sort of obvious sort of whoops that I can think of that their front office has made in the last few years. They have depth at most positions, with the exception maybe quarterback. And I don't love their backup situation, but with the exception of that, they have quality depth at almost every other position. They have players that understand their roles at virtually every position. They have given their players freedom and creativity within one of the most interesting offenses that I've had a chance to study. And obviously, you know, we know that Andy Reid played and coached at the beginning of his career at BYU, got a chance to learn from Doug Scoville and Norm Chow, you know, had a chance to learn from some of the best offensive play designers and coordinators and thinkers in football early in his career. And it made an impression on him, but he's loosened up, right? He takes more and more liberties with the offense every year and gives more of it to his quarterback and even to his tight end himself as a former quarterback to just make stuff up. There's on that first touchdown to Kelsey, the called play is for him to run a corner route. He decides, and just breaks it to a bang 8 to a skinny post, boom, touchdown. And you have to really trust your players, and they have to trust each other to essentially say on any situation, if you don't like the called play, even if you've called that called play at the line of scrimmage, but in the middle of the play, you have the freedom to change it. We all here played a little bit. It's hard to express to someone who maybe doesn't understand how rare that is, right? In a world full of control freaks, because that's what almost every college, pro, high school, youth football coach even I've ever been around, forget pro football coach, think about control freaks most of the coaches you've been around have been. And think about a guy who's like, hey, if you call a play, you decide you want to do something different other than the play we called, sure. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we have the Bears. So the Bears, as everyone knows, not everyone knows, but anyone who studies football knows, they have the oldest career receiving record on the books in the NFL, with about 30 years space between them and the next. Like a man who retired in 1962 or something, or 60, whenever Johnny Morris retired, still holds their receiving record for the team. And once again, he retired, I think, in 1964 or 5 or something, 66 maybe. And then most of the passing records, a few are owned by Jay Cutler, but the rest are owned by Cyanide Sid Luckman, who fought in World War II, right? So that tells you, the season records, most of the season records are now held by Cutler, but still most of the career passing marks are held by Sid Luckman. That tells you everything you want to know about their success or lack thereof at the quarterback position. They just don't understand how to develop quarterbacks. They haven't been able to do it successfully in 70 plus years. I don't know what to say other than they just don't get it. Like, they don't understand it. Something about that organization is broken when it comes to evaluating and developing quarterbacks. And it looks like they're about to break another one.
Didn't the Bears have a quarterback, Bobby Douglas, that almost ran for more yards than he passed for?
Correct. You're thinking about the 1971 season, like it was, some of that. But he was almost the first quarterback to run for 1,000 yards. And this is days of the 14-game season. I think he ran for 979 and passed for about 980 something. So it might have been 7 or 8 yards difference. But he was a terrible passer. They were right to have him run. In fact, they should have just had him run. They should have. I mean, the Jets hired Lou Holtz, and he tried to bring option football to. They should have hired Lou Holtz to bring option football to the NFL. they would have actually done much better because Bobby Douglas would have been a good option quarterback. Nowadays, he'd be converted to an H-back or something. But, yeah, he was a terrific athlete. He played in the same backfield at Kansas with John Riggins, I believe. Or no, Riggins might have been a couple years behind him. But he was I mean, they've had the list of, I mean, they don't quite have the whole Browns jersey thing with the, 23 failed quarterbacks, but they're not far off. I mean, I remember the kids would call it a mid-off nowadays, but when they had a quarterback controversy between Mike Phipps and Bob Avellini, if those are your two options, you're doing it wrong.
Let's see, Dave. The Fans put up 70 points on the scoreboard against the Broncos. They become the first NFL team to score 70 points and put up more than 700 yards, 729, I believe was the exact number, of offense. Dave, should the Fans have gone for the record? I know the coach said something about karma, but after the way that Peyton talked about Hackett, wouldn't that have been karma?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a worthless record to break. I think the Broncos weren't even trying. I mean, it was as if they quit on defense. And I have no doubt that they probably could have broken it, but it's like,
well, they were right there. All they had to do was kick the field goal.
Yeah, what for? I mean, to me, I was very disappointed in the Broncos' pathetic defensive production. I mean, it was just, to me, embarrassing. And in terms of the Dolphins, I actually am in favor of a team. And this is what Belichick used to do. The reason that Tom Brady has so many records is that the Patriots would be up 24-0 in the fourth quarter, and where a team like the Steelers would just start to hand off the ball in neat time. Belichick had Brady throwing and throwing and throwing because Belichick is a historian. He's a football historian, and what he knew was that all those trash touchdown passes and all that trash passing yards after the Patriots already had beaten up on the Jets or the Dolphins, that was all going to stay in the books. And it was basically, hey, if you can stop us, stop us. So for the Dolphins, I have no problem with them running up 70 points. It was Denver's responsibility to stop them. And they put on a pathetic performance. Should they have gone for more? It doesn't matter to me. I mean, how you said it right there. I mean, it's only been done twice before in the regular season, and then I think it was the Bears that beat the Redskins like 73-0 back in the 1940s
championship game. Yeah.
Right. So. Yeah, but I mean, to me, it's more about, the story is more about an NFL defense allowing a team to score like that. Embarrassing. If I'm a Denver fan, and I'm not.
Bill Payton was not apologetic at all. He said he wasn't firing anybody, but. Somewhere I see a pink slip for Russell Wilson, even though this is not his fault. He hasn't played defense so far this season that I know of, but his contract with Denver doesn't really kick in until next year. Bill, what do you see happening here?
So what I see happening regarding what next year?
Russell Wilson's contract that kicks in with Denver.
Yeah.
Right now, Seattle is still paying his salary.
Right. I mean, they can't do anything. What do you mean? I mean, I'm trying to understand the question. Like, it's a contract. What do you mean? They can't do anything. It's a contract.
Well,
It's
I mean,
binding and legal.
okay, it's a contract. Do they pay the contract and let him sit on the bench? Do they pay Stedman? Do they cut him? Somehow or other, Sean Payton is not going to take uh, the brunt of this. And if it has to come between Sean and Russell, I think Russell is the one on the way out. But your
Well,
thoughts?
that's easy to say, but they can't take the cap hit. So no, could they conceivably bench him? Sure, but they can't cut him. They can't trade him. So he's there. He's on the books. He's not going anyplace.
Well, they can trade him if somebody wants to take that contract. They can.
Well,
They
but they
can.
can't take. But
Who's
they can't.
gonna
Take,
take
but they
him?
can't take. They can't take the dead cap hit. Trading doesn't help you with the dead cap. So no, they can't. They can't move it. At least not for a couple of years till the cap hit goes down. So no, they're stuck with it for at least a couple more years. Could you keep calling him Stedman? Could Jared Stidham conceivably get the job instead of Oprah's boyfriend? But could Jared Stidham conceivably win the job? Of course, that's conceivable. He could win the job, but doesn't mean. But Russell Carrington Wilson will, at least for this year and next year, be on the team. That much I can guarantee.
Yeah.
Hey, guess who the Broncos are playing next week?
Yes.
The Bears.
Get right, Ton. Yes, get right, Ton.
Bill, the Chargers wide receiver Keenan Allen becomes the first NFL player to have at least 15 receptions and throw a passing TD in a game. The Vikings quarterback Kurt Russell throws for 367 yards and 3 TDs, but the Vikings fall to 0-3. Bill, what's happening here? You know, are we going to see Kirk Cousins in New York? I mean, you know, how many? What's that? 8 passes, 8 touchdowns he's already had this year, I believe. And so what do you see happening with these two teams? Keenan Allen, yes, he broke the record, but they also lost Mike Williams for the year.
Yep. So that means that Joshua Palmer, and once again, I know if we do a fantasy football segment, that's one of those people I'm telling you to pick up off the waiver wire. And then Quentin Johnston, especially if you're in dynasty leagues, you probably already have Quentin Johnston. But those guys are going to benefit because what Mike Williams was, he was a big-bodied receiver who also could function as a deep threat red zone guy. Quentin Johnston is a kid who's got a big body and can run and can jump. And then Joshua Palmer is another big, strong guy who, you know, is a really good receiver. That isn't even the issue of the team. Defense is the issue the Chargers are having, and coaching. Defense and coaching. The offense is fine. If they could somehow segregate off the offense and, you know, cut off the rest of the team and then attach that offense to, I mean, it's not funny, even Denver's defense. Now, obviously, Denver's defense didn't have a good showing, but we just talked about. But prior to, and I think after that sort of anomaly game we just saw, Denver's defense is going to be a good defense. The Chargers, I worry about. So their wunderkind coach, Brandon Staley, who came with all these expectations and, you know, oh, he's so smart and blah, 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 and he's so young, has cost his team, I would say, an average of 2 games per year himself, like straight up lost them for his team and tried to lose some others, quite frankly. He is not good. Now, he may be good someday, but he's not good now. And whatever happens this season, they need to move on from Brandon Staley. But this is a good, potentially good football team. This is a team that could make a run in the playoffs. They just need better coaching, and they need, I would say, maybe 1 or 2 additions on defense. But this is a better roster than I think, you know, this roster should be producing better. And then the Vikings are, I told you, when we did our whole preseason thing, I said they're going to blow this thing up. I said that before. Why would I change my mind now? I said before the season, this was the Vikings were going to be being blown up, and they was reboot and start over. I said that before.
I thought the whole question was was because they had a lot of losses on defense, and it's like, hey, could they recreate what they had, and they haven't. That's their where they're getting killed is on defense.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're gonna have to reboot. Like I said, this Vikings seems to look very different a year from now.
Dave, little quote here. He's who gives us the best chance to win. And this is Coach Saleh talking in his press conference. And that's basically the clearest answer I can give when he was referring to his quarterback. So Zach Wilson leads the team to a second straight loss as they fall to the Patriots 15-10. What's your thoughts on the Vikings? I know on the Jets. I know they've signed Stedman. Is that
You mean no? Trevor Siemian is who they signed.
Simeon to the taxi squad. But what do you make of all of this, Don? We have. I mean, Dave. We have Aaron. Putting in his 2 cents from way out here in LA. It would seem to me, that if he was generally about mentoring the young man, he could do it from a golf cart at the stadium facilities. But what's your thoughts on this, Dave? Are we putting too much on this young man?
I think just to go back a little bit and kind of like Bill was mentioning, he's not real fond of the depth on Kansas City's quarterback room. You got Patrick Mahomes, and then who's behind him? Well, this is the problem any NFL team has. Somewhere with the salary cap, they got to choose where their weaknesses are going to be. You can't be strong everywhere. It's virtually impossible to keep that for any length of time beyond the season. And so once Aaron Rodgers went down, because they attracted Aaron Rodgers, big money. Well, hoping to bring Zach Wilson. Well, what was it? The first drive, Aaron Rodgers is gone.
Yep.
So I think Saleh, I mean, he has to. One is he wants to maintain Zach Wilson's confidence in himself. So he doesn't want to throw him under the bus. I wouldn't want to do that if I'm the head coach. On the other hand, is he going to get you through this season? And it's like, okay, they signed Trevor Siemian. Colin Kaepernick sent an open letter to the Jets. I say an open letter because somebody on his side published it, saying offered to go on their practice squad and made all these commitments about how he would try to help Zach Wilson. And by the way, if you need me, I'm there. I can still do it. But then, maybe there's somebody like Carson Wentz and Nick Foles, somebody in free agency, if the Jets feel that they could be competitive. If not, well, what they got to do is they got to rally around this young man. There's talks about dissension within the locker room.
Yeah.
And that's what Saleh, he has to put that to rest. He has to get this team rallied around. And if Zach Wilson is going to be his guy, because they're not going to get a free agent to take his place, then he needs to do what he can to get this locker room around. So this is going to be a real test of a head coach. Is the way I take it. If I were the head coach, I would not want to throw him under the bus. And it's like, maybe they made a mistake. They invested all this money. Maybe he's not, but it's just not the right thing to do. Just to waste him. But it's going to be a very big challenge for the coach, I think.
Yeah. And regarding the Kaepernick quote unquote open letter, that was not someone from his camp. That was actually the rapper J. Cole, who ended up posting it on his Instagram feed. Is actually
how did he get the letter?
Oh, I mean, it was shared with J. Cole. That part was true. But I mean, but it wasn't, they weren't the ones that sent it out to the public. J. Cole's the one who posted it on his Instagram feed.
Right.
How it got it out to the public.
But he didn't get that from the Jets, I don't think.
No, he didn't get it from the Jets. Someone,
Right.
You're right. Someone in Kaepernick's camp is a fan of J. Cole. So yeah, that's how that happened. And I won't say who I think it is, but I think I know who it is.
Bill, there's good news and there's not so good news. In 37-3 victory over the Commanders, Josh Allen threw for a TD. He rushed for another. That's the good news. The not so good news is he threw another interception.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, can the Bills afford to get in a shootout with the fans next week?
Well, it doesn't matter if they can afford to or not. I mean, like that, it matters whether or not they can avoid it. Here's the thing: they have a good defense, but not a great defense. The things that you have to do against Tua are the things you've always had to do against Tua. If you can't get there in terms of actually touching him, you have to get into the passing lane and get your arms up. Obviously, he's left-handed. He has a sort of a three-quarter release, and he's 5'11" and change. So you have a chance to get your hands on some balls and tip them. That's something you have to do. 2, you have to not take bad angles against. Okay, so fun fact. They have 4 players on their roster who have won a sprint championship somewhere. Raheem Mostert was the 60-meter hurdles champion in the Big Ten. In the case of Tyreek Hill, he was both the 55-meter and the 100-meter champion at one point in the Big 12. Jalen Waddle didn't participate as a track and field athlete in college, but was a 100 and 200-meter champion in high school. And Devin Achane was at one point a 100-meter champion in the SEC at Texas A&M. So a lot of speed. So that's all that was to say. They need to make sure that you get your hands on these people when they're coming out, whether it's running backs coming out. Now, obviously, it's harder when a running back's coming out of the backfield, but you can still have somebody basically who's, if they go in motion, goes in motion with them. And as they're coming into their route in that little 5-yard area, when you get your hands on them, you've got to get your hands on them. You can't not reroute them. I don't care if it's man, I don't care if it's zone, touch them. If it's zone, you got to play that zone matchup that the Seahawks made so famous, where it's zone but aggressive zone, where you touch them. If you don't, you're going to lose. Like, that's it. Like, there's like, if you don't reroute or slow down or break the timing up, you will lose. Period.
Wasn't it easier when you could just ride his ass out of bounds? I mean,
those were the days, wasn't it? I mean, those were the days, man. Before 1974, that darn illegal contact rule, boy, that ruined all the fun. But
who caused that?
Now, yeah, we all know who. I mean, a 222, 6'2.5" corner who could literally throw people 4 yards out of bounds on a regular basis. So, fun fact: in that year, the year before they made the rule, the quarterback stats, like as an aggregate, were almost exactly the same as the quarterback stats from 1948. So that's how hard it was to play quarterback in 74. So that's why they were like, we have to open the game up. Boo. But back to what you were actually asking about. You can't completely avoid it being something of a shootout. They're going to score on you. The way the game is now played and with the way that team is constructed, it's not going to be 13-17. Like, I would love that. That's the kind of game I grew up watching. But that dog is rarely out and seen in the public anymore. There'll be a handful of games like that, but it won't be these two teams. And the other thing I'll say, they don't have that mismatched pass rusher on their roster. At least I haven't seen him, right? The Von Millers, the TJ Watts, they don't have the guy that's like, oh my God, how do we stop it, right? They don't have that guy. So when you don't have the mismatched pass rusher, that means that you occasionally do have to blitz, which is a very nervous kind of way to live against this team. So, yeah, they're going to give up plays, but you have to try to not give up big plays. Try not to have a bunch of 70-plus yard plays, which is what we saw in the last game. If you have 4 or 5 70-plus yard plays against you, you will not win. That's not really the kind of I guess it's the analysis you get for what you pay me. But the fact is that you've got to get your hands on people. And if they if they throw some flags on you, so be it. But you've got to be very grabby and handsy. You've got to get your arms up the passing lane. And ideally, you should get some pressure and even some hits onto it, whether you get sacks or not. I mean, sacks would be preferable, but at least get some hands up, get some hits on him, harass him a little bit, make life hard on him, and push and pull and tug and grab on those receivers as much as you can, hopefully without getting flagged. But if you get flagged sometimes, we can live with that. That's the cost of doing business.
Okay. Dave, the Texans quarterback C.J. Stroud makes history in their 13-17 defeat of the Jags, 17-3, excuse me.
I think 35-17.
What was it? 35.
35-17.
Yeah. CJ becomes the first quarterback in NFL history to throw for at least 900 passing yards, 4 TDs, and no interceptions in his first 3 career starts. Dave, does that kind of put all of that, all of those rumors and innuendos about CJ's size to rest now?
CJ wasn't the one that was worried about size.
They're going to be playing the Steelers this week, and there's one statistic missing from CJ Stroud's resume that I'm hoping Pittsburgh can help him with. He doesn't have any interceptions yet.
Right.
But it's early in his career. I think what's nice is that he's, hanging 35 points on the Jaguars. I think that's an impressive performance. A lot of people thought that the Texans were going to be, dogs this year, and they're showing that they're coming to compete. Now, where I worry a little bit for Stroud is that their offensive line has taken a lot of injuries. And so now there are 2 left tackles, the guy that started there and then the guy that replaced him. They may not be playing this week. They have Kendrick Green, who they got from the Steelers, who's been their starting left guard. And literally, Kendrick Green had a lot of problems of blocking. So I'm very, very interested in watching this game this Sunday to see how C.J. Stroud performs, because I imagine he's going to be under a bit of pressure. If the Steelers can't put pressure on him, then there's something wrong with Pittsburgh, because the Texans' offensive line is really patched together, and so they're very vulnerable at this point. But I think what he's done, I think his statistics speak for themselves.
Speaking of a team that's lost both of its tackles, even though they weren't both left tackles, I think one was the left, one was the right. But Bill, the Seahawks, we kind of groaned when they lost both their tackles last week, but this week and half to put away the Panthers 37-27. The Panthers backup quarterback, Andy Dalton, threw for 361 yards and 2 TDs. Bill, only 4 games into the season, should the Seahawks be concerned about that secondary?
Well, their secondary is good at what it's good at. And that's, factually speaking, if they keep everything in front of them, which is true of a lot of secondaries, they can be very effective. They've got a lot of long, and of course, some of them very fast also people. The talent level isn't the issue, but if it were just about speed, you would just go and get guys off of the Olympic team to play corner. They have a lot of speed, but they don't have a lot of guys who always sense what route concepts are coming. And actually, you mentioned the Panthers. It's the Panthers that had a quarterback where people were worried about his size. That's Bryce Paul Young. Albert Bernard Stroud Jr. was over 6'2", I think 6'2" and 3/4 and 214 pounds. So he's not the one they were worried about his size. It was actually Bryce Young. But and that's part of why, we see, of course, the red rifle, Andy Dalton out there. But they need to simplify some things a little bit at times. The good news is that they have a lot of talent, right? They have a very talented young secondary. But when you are young and talented, you also make some young, talented player mistakes, and they will sometimes make those. But Andy Dalton is also a guy that doesn't take a lot of deep shots. So that helps them. That plays to their strengths. They're better against short to intermediate passers, and they give up some deep shots. So this helps them a little bit. So they might have a chance to do a little better. I'm assuming, and this is just, once again, fantasy players, I'm assuming they're going to pound the rock in this game. So Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard might both see a lot of touches. And when they do throw the ball, they might also be throwing the ball to running backs come out of the backfield because they want to get the ball out of Andy Dalton's hands quickly because of what you just said in terms of, minimizing mistakes. Because this is the kind of game where the team that turns the ball over is going to lose this game. And the big jump in, Geno Smith's career has been what? Protecting the football. That was what his issue was early in his career. And why he didn't last with the Jets was turnovers. He's now fixed that, or at least seemingly has, and is so far in his starts as a Seahawk. If that continues and they are able to force turnovers, the Seahawks should win this game.
Dave, no Ayuk, no problem. The 49ers, Mr. Irrelevant, throws for 310 yards, 2 TDs. McCaffrey rushes for a TD. Debo adds another TD. And the 49ers smacked the Barkley-less Giants in a 30-12 beatdown. Dave, what did you think about the 49ers' performance, even without Ayuk?
Oh, they're the real deal. Against Pittsburgh, we tried to shut down their other weapons, and then Ayuk just ran rampant. But what's been demonstrated, he hurt his shoulder. They just have so many weapons that they can go to. That's why they're one of the top teams in the NFL. And with McCaffrey, now that's a guy that's showing durability. He's earning his money. There's been this big issue about the running backs and what they're earning. He's been available and he's been producing, and so I just think that Ayuk not being in there just demonstrates what a deep, talented roster the 49ers have.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you there when you talk about depth. Bill, the Packers quarterback Jordan Love actually rallies the Packers to an 18-17 victory over the Saints.
Yep.
The Saints quarterback Derek Love is said to be day-to-day. But Bill, using the eye test, has Jameis Winston actually digressed?
Well, there's no way to know. I mean, we'll know once we get a chance to see him. I would say Jameis has not digressed. I think Jameis has progressed. And the real test will be whether or not he throws interceptions. That's always been his bugaboo. It was really, even in college, that was his issue. He was one of those young, strong quarterbacks who grew up watching Brett Favre and thought, oh, yeah, that's how I want to play. I'm going to throw the ball in the double team, triple teams. And when it works, everyone will go crazy. And when it doesn't, I'll get him next time. So I think he's learned that sometimes you just want to find completions. And I think that his understanding of that, just find completions. He spent a lot of time with Drew Brees. He spent a lot of time with Sean Payton. And in his time with the Saints, I think he's begun to see that there's no extra points for a degree of difficulty. I think that finally has hit him. And if indeed he plays like he understands there's no extra points awarded per degree of difficulty, just find completions, they'll be fine.
Gentlemen, we're going to go into what is known as our After Dark series here because I've had this Ravens question on my... So, Dave, it turns out this week that the coach, place kicker, Matt Day, kicked 4 field goals, all over 50 yards, including the game winner, to beat the Ratbirds 22-19. The quarterback, the running back, Zach Moss, actually rushed 30 times for 122 yards. And Minshew threw for 227 yards and a TD. Dave, what the F happened here?
The Ravens defense is not what a traditional Ravens defense is. And I think, part of it is the secondary is suspect. But, with the running yards on there, it's just not a dominant defense like Cleveland. And I'm sure we'll talk about Cleveland. That's a dominant defense now. There's been a role reversal there. And again, part of the Ravens' issues, they lost their starting running back, so they can't control the ball. Now Lamar Jackson is like their main. That's their main weapon now. But they're definitely vulnerable in part because that defense is not what it was.
Definitely have to agree there. Bill, the Lions quarterback Jared Goff, he threw for a TD and ran for one as the Lions bounced back from to a 20-6 victory over the Falcons. The Falcons failed to protect Desmond Ridder, who was sacked 7 times by a Lions defense that had only given up that only had 1 sack in the previous 2 games. Talk to us about the Lions' performance there. I know our guy Demetrius is on the plane, but maybe you could do us some justice there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the question, because I was trying to figure out exactly what the meat of the question was.
Well, the meat of the question is, are the Falcons, at one time we were talking about the Falcons being a contender for that division.
Yep.
And we were also talking about the Lions being a contender for their division. So
Yes.
basically, the question is, which is closer to being the team that we were talking about at the beginning of the year?
Well, I mean, I think we might still be right on both of them, but I'll start with the Lions. The Lions are clearly they're a year ahead of where the Falcons are currently. The Falcons, I think, are still a year away from being a very good football team, but you don't have to be a very good football team to win the NFC South. So you can be a 9-win team, maybe even an 8-win team, and win the NFC South. So we may be right still. They may still take the NFC South, and the Lions, I think, have an excellent chance to win the Central, the NFC Central. They have an improving defense. It's not a great defense, but their defense is better. And they also need a couple of pieces, but that's what the draft is for. But or free agency, but they're moving in the right direction on defense. Their offense is one of the best offenses in football. They have good running backs. Not great, but good running backs who know their roles, who know what they're supposed to do and do it. Jameer Gibbs is a guy who ran 4.36 in the 40. He has good hands. He's their change of pace guy. Also, they get him the ball in the running game as well as throwing the ball to him. And they brought Dave Montgomery via free agency. He's sort of a no-frills, downhill runner. Not quite as dynamic as Jamal Williams, but can sort of do some of the same things that Jamal Williams did. They have a terrific young tight end. And once again, my dynasty people already know because they snapped him up somewhere in the 3rd-ish round, probably of their dynasty draft. But Sam Laporta is going to put up great numbers in that offense for years to come. Amon-Ra St. Brown, to my mind, is a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. Their offensive line is good but not great, but they can keep adding to that. To me, they will go as far as two parts of their team sort of hold up. Their secondary, which is very prone to giving up big plays last year. If they can stop doing that this year, they are a legit threat to be going deep in the playoffs. And the aforementioned offensive line. To me, their secondary and offensive line will be the two determining factors to if they do indeed make a deep run.
Sounds good. Dave, you wanted to talk about the Clowns. So the Clowns' defensive end, Myles Garrett, and their D, they devoured the Titans. Deshaun Watson had 2 TDs in their 27-3 win. And now they've ended up signing Kareem Hunt to take the place of Chubb's place while he's on IR. So far, we've had some good news that it wasn't a season-ending injury like we first thought it was. But Dave, are the Titans that good, that bad, or are the Clowns that good?
Well, I think it's kind of a combination. The Titans. I think Derrick Henry right now. I think he's 163 yards in the first 3 games. They've always relied on him, and maybe he's starting to reach the end of his run. We'll have to see. But with Cleveland, I tell you, and Deshaun Watson, he threw a couple touchdowns. It's kind of feast or famine. He can do something really, really good, and then he'll do something really, really dumb. Against the Steelers, he had 3 penalties. He got fined for 3. 2 of them were face masks. One of them was he was like pantomiming a gun. Ben Roethlisberger was fined for doing doing the 6 shooters. But what they did not fine Deshaun Watson for was shoving the referee, which shocked me. I was surprised by that. But he'll do dumb things like that, and then he'll do something good and throw the passes. I think Cleveland's success right now runs through that defense. That Myles Garrett, they're moving him around all over. You don't know where he's going to appear in the lineup. So I think that even missing Chubb, I think that Cleveland is still dangerous. I think Kareem Hunt, we'll see how he comes along, how game ready he is. Ford, who had replaced Chubb, he didn't gain many yards in the game against the Titans, but he can catch the ball, and he can run. So I think it's a combination of the two.
I mentioned some of my conversations with my physical therapist when it comes to soft tissue injuries. And Bill, the Bungles managed to keep Joe Burrows upright in their 19-16 win over the Rams. But Joe said that the Bungles couldn't afford to start 0-3, which, so now they're 1-2. What if he gets knocked out within the next 2 games and they're 1-5? So, Bill, I'm not sure if I understand this logic, but do you think that the Bungles are playing Russian roulette with Joe's injury?
So you said, are the Bungles able to?
Are they playing Russian roulette with Joe's injury?
It's a strained calf. That's not a season ender. Could they rest him 1 more week? They sure could. But at this point, it's just a pain/discomfort management issue and a keeping him smart about it issue. As long as he doesn't, try too hard to sprint full speed or certain things, it should be okay. They can't afford to lose any more games, James, at least not in the immediate future. They need to stack a few wins. So they're trying to get to 500 or close to it. If they can get to 2-3, and he feels a little twinge, they might be able to sit him again. But as of now, yeah, they need to win.
What did you think about that, Dave?
Well, I think that this is the Joe Burrow decision. He wants to play. One of the concerns is with the calf injury. Could this be related to an Achilles? I think we were talking about that before, but right now we don't know. We don't know what part of the calf it is,
Right.
what muscle it is, and I think that for Cleveland, I mean they're not gonna, if they feel that his Achilles is vulnerable. I think that they would sit him. They would say, no, you need to rest. So, I think that this is between the team doctors. I'm sure that Joe Burrow has his own physicians also weighing in, and it's Joe wants to play, because if he didn't want to play, if he said, "Hey, then he'd be sitting down." So this is a Joe Burrow decision, is the way I view it, and I agree with Bill. They need to win. They started out in a hole and they're trying to get out of the hole.
Bill, the Eagles took away the Bucks in their 25-11 victory on Monday night. Bill, after Monday night, where do you rank the Eagles in the NFC hierarchy?
Where do I rank them in the division?
In the NFC hierarchy, do you have them ahead of the 49ers, behind the 49ers? Do you have somebody else in the NFC ahead of them? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so the Eagles and the 49ers are the top two teams, and I don't think you'll be able to find anybody who disagrees. I guess I give the 49ers the ever so slight edge at this moment because I like their defense slightly better. But the Eagles have a good defense too. It just isn't playing quite at the at the clip it was previously. Let's see. Who would be the third team? That's a great question who the third team would be. I would probably say, I mean, Green Bay has a chance to be in that mix for team three. No, probably say Detroit. Maybe Detroit. Detroit might be that third team.
Dallas and Seattle could get into the mix too at some point.
Oh, they're in there. Yeah, I mean, I don't trust Dallas because I never trust Dallas, but they could get there. And yeah, Seattle's in that mix too. I mean, those are like the top 5-6 teams there.
Dave, the Steelers D has 3 interceptions against Jimmy Porn as the Steelers prevail 23-18. Kenny Pickett throws for 235 yards and 2 TDs. The Steelers have 333 yards and 17 first downs compared to the 494 yards and 24 first downs they had in the first 2 games. And they also got their first road win against the Raiders since 1995. Dave, talk to us about our Steelers.
All right. Well, first of all, that was a home game there in Las Vegas, Pennsylvania. And Steelers Depot, we had Ross McCorkle, one of our contributors, was at the game, and he said it was, and there was a lot of Raiders fans there. Both teams had a lot of fans there, but it's a lot closer, and it's a home game for the Raiders. But it actually put the Raiders into a silent count during the game.
Yep.
And there was one delay of game that they kind of attributed to fan noise, and the players were very excited to have that backing from Steeler Nation. But there's still some warts in this game. One of the things that Kenny Pickett did very good against the Raiders is he took care of the ball. He didn't have any dumb passes. He had I think 3 interceptions in the first 2 games, and he did not give the ball away in this game, which was an important factor. The defense was able to shut down Josh Jacobs, who was the leading rusher last year. But actually, Josh Jacobs he's had a slow start this season. But I thought it was a very solid effort. They got the Texans coming up. They've only played the Texans 7 times in franchise history because the Texans only came into the league in 2002. And because they're an NFC team, they just don't play each other much. The Steelers are riding a 3-game win streak. It's going to be in Houston. I'm going to be interested to see, if Steeler Nation can kind of make a showing down there. But I think one of the things that's very troubling, Steelers Depot charts every game. So one of the they're kind of focused in on the run game. And so that what they were looking at were negative run plays. A negative run play is, as we were defining it, is where you gain no yards or you have a loss of yardage on the running play. And in the first 3 games, 31% of the Steelers' running plays have been negative plays. They've actually gained 0 yards or lost yardage. And that was exhibited in the Raider game where Najee Harris he stiff-armed one player away, forced 2 others to miss tackles just to get to the line of scrimmage. He had to avoid 3 Raiders just to get to the line of scrimmage. There's something seriously wrong with the Steelers' running game, and hopefully they figure it out this week. They're actually on a short week. They played Sunday night, but they had to make an emergency landing in Kansas City because of an engine problem on the plane, and they were stuck in Kansas City for a long time. So they're actually using a short week preparation period because they lost all those hours trying to come back from the game. But I think what's very telling is that statistic. I mean, just to compare, the best team in the league is Philadelphia, where only 8% of their running plays are negative plays, where they don't gain any yardage or lose yardage. And if the Steelers want to beat the Texans, that's something that they can't be stopped on 31% of their run plays like that. It just puts them in the hole right in the beginning of the drive.
Well, let's get to our week 4 predictions then. Thursday night, tomorrow night, we have the Lions. They're getting 1.5. They're playing at Green Bay. And the over-under is 46. Dave, who you got?
Well, Demetrius is going to be unhappy. I'm taking Green Bay. I'm back on the love boat this week. And with the 46, I'm going to take the under.
Bill, who you got?
Oh, in the game? Give me what's the spread?
-1.5 for the Lions, and the over-under is 46.
Give me the over, and I'll take the Lions, and I'll give the points.
Okay, Sunday, London, 6:30 a.m. The Falcons getting 3 from the Jags. The over-under is 44, Bill.
The Jags are giving or getting the points?
Jags are
giving.
They're giving the points. Okay. And they're giving, you said how many? They're
3.
Giving 3. I thought it was okay, 3. Oh, it's probably just about right. Oh, I hate how accurate they are. I will go with Jaguars and lay the points. I don't love it.
Okay, and the 10 o'clock games, with the first game will be the Fins getting 2.5 from the Bills, and the over-under is 53.5, Bill.
I don't think the Bills will cover that many points. So yeah, I don't think they'll cover that many points.
They won't cover 2.5.
Oh wait, hold on. I'm sorry, misunderstood you. Then yes, they can. Wait, hold on.
And the over under is 53.5.
Yeah, give me the over. Give me the over.
Dave, Falcons Jags. Falcons getting 3.
Okay, I think jet lag plays a factor in this game, and I'm going to go with the rookie running back for Falcons, Robinson, pounding people while they're still trying to get sand out of their eyes. So I'm taking the Falcons, and I'll take the under in that game.
Okay. The fans and the Bills.
Wow. Well, and the Finns actually are getting 2.5 points after scoring 70 points. So they're getting even more points. So I'm going to take the Dolphins, and I'm going to take the over in this game because Buffalo is capable of scoring, 35 points, easy.
Okay. The Vikings giving 3.5 to the Panthers. Dave, over under 45.
Yeah, 2-0-3 teams, but Cousins, I'm going to take him over Dalton. So I'm taking the Vikings, and I'm going to take the over in that game.
Okay, and the Ratbirds and the Clowns. Glad these guys are knocking each other off on the way up here. So the Ratbirds are getting 2.5 at the Clowns. The over under is 41.5. Dave.
I want a tie. I want a tie game. And so if there's a tie game, then the Ratbirds get 2.5. So I'll take the Ratbirds, and I'm going to take the under, even though it's only 41.5 points. That's not many points, but I'm still going to take the under. I think Lamar has the edge over Deshaun. I still Lamar Jackson still has a lot of gas in the tank.
Bill, the Vikings are getting 3.5, giving the Panthers 3.5, and the over under is 45.
You said they're getting.
The Vikings are giving the Panthers 3.5, and the over under is 45.
Okay, give me the over. And oh wow, this game is tight. I will go with the Vikings, but I don't feel good about it.
Okay, the Ratbirds getting 2.5 from the Clowns, and 41.5 is the over under.
And it's being played. That game's been played where?
Cleveland.
Being played in Cleveland. Oof, Cleveland's tough. And it was 3.5?
2.5.
2.5. 2.5. I'll go Cleveland.
The Broncos getting 3.5 from the Texans, and the over under. From the Broncos getting 3.5, giving 3.5 to the Bears. Over under is 45. Bill.
Oof. I'll go with the under, and I mean I can't very well pick the Bears. And that one's being played
in Chicago.
Okay, so yeah, they'll keep it close. They're sort of everyone's fighting, if not for the team, then for their individual coaching and playing lives at this point. So yeah, while I don't think the Bears win the game, I think they will prevent a cover.
And the Steelers giving the Texans 3.5. Over under is 41. Bill.
I'm going to go with the over, and I'm going to go with the Steelers.
Okay, so let's start. Dave, the Broncos and the Bears. Over under 45. Broncos giving up 3.5.
Okay, another matchup of 0-3 teams. But man, I just did not like what I saw out of the Broncos defense, and probably they're going to prove me wrong. But I'm going to take the Bears in the 3.5 points and take the under in that game.
The Steelers and the Texans, Dave.
Auto Steelers.
Over under 41.
Over.
Okay. The Bucks and the Saints. The Bucks are getting 3.5. The over under is 40.5.
I'm going to take the Bucks.
They're giving
Jameis
3.5 to the Saints.
Yeah. I like the Saints. I like them better with Derek Carr. So I'm gonna take the Bucks, and I'll do the over on that. 40.5, 40.5. That's low. So I'm gonna go over.
Dave, the Commanders getting 7 points from the Eagles. They're playing at the Eagles, and the over under is 44.5.
We're going to see some more tush pushing. I'm going to take the Eagles. They got that O line, and I'll take the over on the points.
Okay, Bill, the Bucks and the Saints. Bucks getting 3.5, and the over under is 40.5.
Okay, 40.5. Well, I'm going to go over. That's a low number. We just talked about Jameis getting avoid, trying to commit the big play, trying to make big plays happen. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say the Saints pull this out, and I'll take the over.
Okay. The Commanders getting 7 from the Eagles. Over under is 44.5. Bill?
I'm sorry, you said it was 47.5?
44.5.
44.5. And this game's being played in or at
Philly.
I'll take the Eagles. And the over.
Here's a pushing game for you, Bill. The Rams +1 at the Colts. Over under is 45.
I'll take the under, but ever so slightly. I think both defenses show up and play extremely well, and I'll take the Colts.
Okay, and the Bungles giving 1.5 to the Titans. Over under is 42.5.
I'll go under, and I don't believe in the Titans, so I'll take they're playing the Rams, you said? I mean, no, they're not playing the Rams. They're playing the
Bengals. Titans.
Bengals. Oh, right, Bengals. Yeah, I think the Bengals are going to right the ship a little bit. I think they get to, especially with Joe Burrow playing in it, which I believe will. I think they'll right the ship and they'll get, move their way back towards at least the middle of the pack. So I'll give them the Bengals.
Okay. The Sunday afternoon game, the first one, the Raiders are getting 4.5 from the Chargers, and the over-under is 50.5, Bill.
I'll take the over, and I think the Chargers cover the points.
Okay. Let's see. Where did we stop off, Dave? The Rams and the Colts?
No, we need to do that one, I believe.
Okay. The Rams and the Colts. It's a pick'em game. Rams getting +1. Colts. The over/under is 45.
I'm taking the Rams offense over the Colts defense. So I'm taking the Rams and the over on the points.
And the Bungles giving 1.5 to the Titans. Over/under is 42.5.
Yeah, if I think what the Titans have to try to do is they have to put pressure on Burrow. They need to try to make him run on that sore calf. That's something that the team failed to do last week. If they let him sit back there and pass, they're toast. But even if they do, I think that the Bengals have too many weapons. So I'm taking the Bengals and the under on the points.
Yeah, maybe T. Higgins will catch a pass this week or two. Um, let's see. Did we get to the Raiders and the Chargers? The Raiders are getting 4.5. Over under is 50.5, Dave.
You know, the Chargers need to start winning. I mean, I don't think that the Raiders offense is good enough to exploit a weak Chargers defense. And I think that the Chargers offense is strong enough where they're going to take it. And so I'm going to take the Chargers in that game. But I'll take the under on the points.
Okay, and let's see. Our 125 games on Sunday. Dave, the Cardinals are getting 14 from the 49ers, and the over-under is only 43.5.
Yeah. I think San Francisco wins, but I think that Josh Dobbs has been doing a serviceable job, a heroic job at quarterback. One thing that was so sad, he went to their pro shop to buy his jersey. They didn't have his jersey available. So then the Cardinals had to hurry up and go out and make his jersey available, which he got. So
He might
I'm
have
going
some
to
old Steelers. We might have some old Steelers jersey available if they want
right, exactly.
to.
So I'm going to take the Cards and the points, although I think that they're going to lose, and I'll take the over on the points.
Okay. Bill, the Cards and the 49ers, over under is 43.5. Cards getting 14 points.
14?
That's what I said, 14.
Well,
Two
I mean,
touchdowns and 2 extra points.
I can't see them covering that number. That number's a ludicrous number. And the over-under was
43.5.
so in a game where one team's supposed to win by 2 touchdowns, they have a 43.5. That's probably right about right. Also, I'll go just barely under, and I won't like it at all, but I'll just barely go under. But yeah, 14 is too big a number to cover.
And the Patriots getting 7 from the Cowboys. The over-under is 42.5.
I'll take the over, but ever so slightly. And this feels like stealing. I mean, I think the Cowboys might well win, but I think that the Patriots will find a way to keep it close. So no cover. Patriots are the team I'll pick, though they don't win. They don't allow the Cowboys to cover.
Okay, and the Sunday night game, the Chiefs are giving the Jets 9. And once again, the over-under is just like the Cowboys and Patriots, 42.5.
Okay, 42.5 points is the over-under. It's being played where again?
In New
Being
York
played in New
or
York.
New Jersey.
Oh,
Yeah.
New Jersey.
Right. Okay.
And they're good. They're getting 9.
They're getting 9? Oh, I'm a sucker for big spreads. I just don't. So many things could happen. I don't think they can cover the 9. So, and the 42.5, you said?
Yep.
I'll take the under, but I don't like it.
Okay, and our Monday night game is the Seahawks giving the Giants 1. And the over-under is 46.5, Bill.
I'll take the over, and I'll take the Seahawks.
Okay. Let's see. Dave, where did we leave off? The Raiders and the Chargers?
Uh,
Or the Cards and the Panthers? I mean,
no,
the Cards.
I did the
You did the Cards and the 49ers?
Cardinals and the 49ers. So the Pats and Cowboys are next.
Okay, so the Pats and Cowboys, the Pats getting 7. The Cowboys, the over-under is 42.5.
That's a big spread, and Belichick's a good defensive. He's a defensive genius. But the Cowboys got really embarrassed last week, and I think that they're going to bounce back big. I'm still going to take the under on the points, but I'm taking the Cowboys to beat the spread.
The Cowboys to beat the spread? Okay.
Or excuse me, the Cowboys to cover.
Cover it, yeah.
Okay. Sunday night, Dave, the Chiefs giving the Jets 9, over under another 42.5.
Well, we were just talking about Zach Jones and potential dissension in the locker room. And Mahomes is no joke. I mean, Kansas City's a great team. I'm going to take the Chiefs, and I'll take the over in that game.
And Monday night, the Seahawks -1 at the Giants, over under 46.5.
I'm surprised that at that spread, but I'm going to take the Seahawks in the under.
Okay. Bill and Dave, good as always, talking sports with you guys. Bill, why don't you give us your final thoughts for the evening?
Well, first of all, a very sad, solitary note. Unfortunately, a young boxer, I know you're a boxing guy, James. Unfortunately, after a fight, went into a coma and succumbed to his injuries. And, we never want to see anything sports related result in or end in someone's dying. That's never worth it. That's never anything. Aaron Fitchett, he's from. Actually, sorry, it was a massive heart attack. It wasn't from the ring. It wasn't from the actual punches, whatever. But he's from my hometown. He's from Virginia Beach, Virginia. But that's not really my final thought. I just wanted to make mention of my condolences to his family, his friends, and all those who cared for him. But we talked about, and I'm glad we did. We talked about Brooks Robinson, who is, if you're below a certain age, that name doesn't have the magic that it once had. If you are of a certain age, if you were born, between say, 1925 and 1965, that's a very magical name. Probably a little bit less magical if you're born in 65 to 75, and then anyone younger than that, you only know him as obviously as a broadcaster. But what I would like to focus on is an event that took place, on this day, in the year of 1950. And Ezra Charles defeated Joe Louis in 15 rounds in Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. Now, Ezra Charles was one of the greats as a light heavy. It was obviously Joe Louis was well past his prime. And this is one of those examples of a fighter who unfortunately fought well past his prime, and largely, if not entirely in this case, because he owed a significant amount of money to the IRS and was trying to pay that off. But Ezra Charles is sort of a historic footnote as a heavyweight. But for those that study the great light heavyweight champions in the history of the game, he's probably a top 4 or 5 light heavyweight boxer. Ezra Charles fought as a quote unquote heavyweight at about 188 pounds, which is a tough way to live, but he managed it, and like I said, managed to be a heavyweight champion at that rather, even for those days, rather undersized weight. He was a tactician. He had a terrific jab. He was quick. He understood how to defend himself. He had to, right? Because he was up against a lot of larger fighters once he went up to fighting heavyweight because of the money. And Ezra Charles is, like I said, remembered, but not remembered as well as he probably should have been, because people focused on his heavyweight career instead of his light heavyweight career, where he was outstanding. I mean, obviously he was a champion, even as a heavyweight, despite the disadvantages that he faced because of his size. So I know now people have sort of gotten away from the what's the word I'm looking for? The tyranny almost of the heavyweight division. At his very heaviest, he was 201 pounds, and I don't think it was all good weight by the time he got up to that. But in his prime as a heavyweight, he was, upper 180s, low 190s. And we've seen a few smaller heavyweights, even now, manage to be great. But Ezra Mac Charles, the Cincinnati Cobra, as I'm sure you're familiar with, had tremendous defense, was precise. And some people think he was the greatest light heavy of all time. He had a record when he retired of 95 wins, 25 losses, 1 draw. He is, of course, in the Hall of Fame as a boxer. And I mean, we look at him as a light heavy. Like I said, I mean, he fought so many great light heavies and beat virtually all of them. Was the Chicago Golden Gloves champion as a middleweight. Also was the AU national middleweight champion and turned pro in 1940. Also served with honor in our military as well. But like I said, I just wanted to make sure that this man, who was one of the greats of all time, is not forgotten.
Thank you for that, Bill. Dave, your final thoughts for the evening.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Deion Sanders. We were talking about the remarks about his keeping receipts, and I listened to the full post-game interview. It's about 10 minutes long, and I have to admit, I watched Deion Sanders play as a player. I never paid attention to anything he had to say. To me, it was all noise. Now, when he played, I enjoyed his playing. He couldn't tackle worth a darn. Sometimes he made some business decisions, but he was a Hall of Fame shutdown defensive back. I mean, he was a great, great player. But I listened to his full interview after they got smacked down, and he was under, a lot of scrutiny. And some of the things that he mentioned, first of all, he made no excuses for the loss. He gave credit. He made sure to give credit to the Oregon coaches and to the teams in their preparation. And he also he didn't use the loss as well. Hey, we're going to forget about it. He said, no, we're going to learn from that. We're going to evaluate that and then move on. And we're going to figure out how to improve. And because basically he just described the way Deion Sanders described the game is it was an old-fashioned butt kicking. Those were his words. And he said, but hey, I still have confidence in my players. I don't think that there was a big talent gap, although some people would disagree. There's definitely a size gap. But what he was doing is he was showing confidence in his players. And he also said that both the players and the coaches were accountable. So he wasn't just letting himself or his assistant coaches, but he said that there were coaches and players that did perform well in that game. And so what I got out of that is, as a coach, he gave a 10-minute example of how to deal with the loss in a positive way. He acknowledged the other team. He went to get a learning experience, And when coaches talk, and Mike Tomlin has talked about this before, when he's answering the reporter's questions, sometimes his responses aren't just for the public. He's talking to his team. And I think that Deion Sanders gave a very great example that any coach, if they wanted to learn how to handle a post-game conference after a bad loss, this is something that any coach could learn a lot from. They're playing USC next week, and if somehow Colorado wins that game, I'm going to listen to Deion Sanders on how he handles winning, because it's how you handle winning and losing. They're equally important, I think, for coaches. So I just want to give a shout out to Deion Sanders. I thought any coach in any sport would be proud of the way that he handled himself in that interview. So those are my last thoughts for tonight.
Hey, well, thank you guys as always. Appreciate your time. Look forward to talking to you next week. Hopefully Demetrius will be back. I know Reggie will be back from Korea. And I believe Bo will be back also. We will have Tiffany will be here because next Thursday night, I believe it's the Cowboys and the 49ers. So Tiffany will be in to give her breakdown on that game. So look forward to doing that next week. So have a great night, guys. And we'll talk to you next week. Have a good one.
All right. Hey, thanks again. See you, Bill. See you, James.
See you. Thank you. Great night.